Chris, thanks for jumping on with me. Welcome. Why don't you sort of introduce yourself for the listener?
All right, my name is Chris Gardner, known just about everywhere online as Freestyle Coder. I am professionally a very high-level software dev and also have been a lifelong gamer and have done a lot of stuff in game development and game development advocacy, and including on my Twitch stream, which is on a hiatus right now for this particular point, working on a game open source and kind of getting into the weeds and slowly but surely showing what it takes to get that stuff done.
I've got a number of things I want to talk to you about, but one of them is for sure the live coding thing, because I feel like that's one of the most courageous things a software developer can do, right?
There's definitely nerve-wracking, and it's less that it's difficult to code live, although that is difficult. The trick is you have to halfway be in the mindset to be able to write the code, but at the other time, not just be completely silent and typing,
right,
and have some sort of, if not entertainment, at least explaining what you're doing. And so it's really trying to do the two things at once that makes it challenging. Because half the point is I'm supposed to mess up. I'm supposed to have bugs that we then go discover and fix later, et cetera. Because that's part of the process and learning and showing how it's okay. But it's that dual track mind of I either need to focus on writing code or I need to be engaging to the camera, and trying to do both at the same time is where things get very interesting.
It felt, I've tried it briefly, and it felt very unnatural to me. A while back, I actually tried it with my first co-host for the podcast because he was less of a game developer guy, and he was like a networking guy professionally. And so he's like, let's get on and you can kind of teach me something like Unity or something like that. And we did try it, and it was very unnatural for me. I tried to get him, explain things. And like you said, I could do one or the other well, but I can't entertain while I get technical. When I'm doing this stuff, I'm normally, muttering curse words to myself and spending 15 minutes at a time on Google and stuff. So it's wrong for me, I think.
Well, the spending 15 minutes of a time on Google, I do that midstream. It's like, I don't know what's going on. And then you get the fun of trying to be engaging, reading technical documentation out loud.
Yeah. Skimming the docs. Yeah.
Right. But much like any other skill, it's practice. I'm sure my first couple streams 2 years ago-ish were nowhere near as polished and engaging as I can pull off now, having done it for long periods of time. Just like any other streamer, any other YouTuber or whatever, as you do it and you get more comfortable with the camera and keeping your eye on all the things at once while you're doing it. Yes, am I coding at I'm billing customers hundreds of dollars an hour level? No, but can we get a chunk done in the hour scheduled for the stream and I can be engaging to the audience at the same time? Yes.
It was a confidence issue too. It was like the first time I out loud expressed a question, like I actually forgot what thing I need to do with this and I can't think of it at the moment. Somebody wrote it in the chat and then left before I thought to look in the chat to see what was going on at the time. And I thought, like, this is my lowest point as a developer. Someone came in, knew the answer, left, and really it should have been awesome. It should have been like, oh my God, a really smart listener is here. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. And instead I kind of spiraled inward. I'm wrong for this.
I mean, and that happens to everybody. I did it once and it was a trivial thing because if I'm thinking how to decode this large complex process, I'm going to forget the silly Googleable F1 parameter stuff. And that's where somebody can come in and go, oh, it's this. And yeah, you just have to roll with it. And it's like, yeah, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to encode model a deck of cards and the intricacies of the ways they naturally shuffle if you're doing a riffle shuffle. So yes, I forgot that the second parameter to this function I've used 500 times before is this. Yeah.
Is that a real example, by the way? Because I've found card games to be one of the most stressful development experiences of all.
Yeah, so the game we're working on is a concept I came up with years ago, and it's called card roulette. So the idea is, imagine a roulette table. Now modify it so that it makes sense with a deck of cards. And so the concept is you shuffle the deck of cards and you flip through them one at a time, playing roulette based on what card comes up, with the idea of, as you go along, the better you can remember statistics and whatnot about the deck, the better you can make your bets to win more at the end.
Nice.
So we spent the first 6 months working on this, literally trying to model a deck of cards.
Yeah.
Trying to get shuffles right, trying to get cuts right, trying to get dealing off, dealing with discard piles, all of that other type of stuff, figuring out the best way to handle all that. And then if that wasn't bad enough, I then had to write all these helper methods that said, based on what's in this deck of cards, which may be a full deck of cards, or maybe whatever's left in after, let's say, a fourth of it's been done, go through and do the statistics of what are the probabilities that it's a red, what are the probabilities it's a black, what are the probabilities it's a king, et cetera, so that when somebody places a bet, I'm writing the game with a couple different rule sets, that way. Yes, I have the rough idea of a story mode as it goes along to kind of teach people the game. It's not about the story mode type of thing. But, it's like when you first begin, all the odds stay static as you're going through. But then hey, we're going to go try our hands in Vegas and enter this tournament. And then the idea is the statistics evolve based on what's left in the deck. So I have to be able to very quickly on the fly go, okay, now there's only 40 cards left in the deck and 19 of them are red, so that red actually has a higher percentage payout because there's less of them type of stuff. And we had to go through all of that as well. And that, you want to talk about being compelling on stream, try writing all of the mathematical statistical models for that on stream live, trying to be entertaining, getting all that done. That was a nightmare, but
yeah. and my math process is more guess and attempt than you would guess, probably. It's more of a almost more art than science sometimes, and that would be another embarrassing factor, but that's extremely cool, and it's a cool idea, and man, I would love to play that in the near future. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, there is a working prototype on the GitHub, but you kind of have to, I'm not an artist, be the first to admit it. There is very much programmer art in place for the board, and you kind of have to know what the board is for it to actually work. So before it went in stasis, because of some stuff I had going on in the spring, we actually got it to a workable point where I actually flipped through a deck and played a game and tried to actually make it work. And it does work. So there's a work. Now I just need to get somebody to make a board that looks like a board. A friend of mine was supposed to do it, but then he got bit. And now we're in the weeds of the polish to get I proved the pre-alpha worked. Now we need to get to an alpha to where maybe a few people could hit it and go, hey, yeah, we really do need to develop this before you get to the beta. And part of the experiment is, hey, if this keeps going and people get more interested in it, maybe you throw it up on Kickstarter and get some funding for it. Or, it's let's do the whole process. Let's show what it's like from beginning to end. And one of the reasons I got into, advocating game development design and amateur design and indie design and stuff like that is there's a lot of really smart programmers out there that think game development's this sort of black magic. They could write, they could architect these huge, massive solutions that solve, business problems for the largest companies, but they're like, game dev, no, that's scary. So there really is a lot of this of doing it out in the open going, no, it's using the same stuff, there might be slightly more math. You got to wrap your head around the game loop, but all in all, it's the same stuff.
Yeah. It is a new way of thinking, and you're a guy, this kind of goes back to the first time we crossed paths, which I'm sure I remember better than you, because you do a lot of speaking. But in my case, I came to one of your little sessions in St. Louis, I believe, for Days of .NET. Is that right?
Yes.
You do Days of .NET, which, now it's been a long time because I'm not a .NET developer anymore, but you were doing a game dev session there. And whereas I promised my managers I would be doing very businessy things all day, I did take a break to to watch you basically prototype a game just right in front of us. And I don't remember what you were using. Do you know what you were using at that time?
It's the same thing I primarily use these days. I can't tell you whether or not it was XNA or monogame, but it was that 6 of one, half dozen the other. One gave birth to the other one that then superseded the first one. So, but yeah, it was probably either XNA or monogame. It was all in C#.
I bet I was sure it was C#, and I bet it was XNA because I was super excited about XNA at the time. I had the books I was going through and everything, and now it's not so much these days. I know there's FNA, right?
Microsoft completely has walked away from the project. It is now through the Mono framework, which even though Microsoft now owns through Xamarin, they're still just using the backbones of that from where they've ported everything in Monogame. So you have to go get Monogame and install that framework. But almost everything now that used to be in XNA is in Monogame. And Monogame is now supported on almost every platform. I don't know if they have gotten to PS5 yet, but I mean, they've got PS4, PS3, Switch, you name it. They have the runtime to run on all of them these days, and it's very well supported completely through an open source, indie, let's keep it alive campaign. Because it really is a great framework.
And it's still one of the better ways to do like a multi-platform game, from what I understand. I've had guests on the show who have used it for their stuff. If you're a coder at heart, it's one of the better ways to work to this day, as far as I know.
And I agree with that. I mean, a lot of indie game development these days are going through Unity. Yeah. And I don't have a problem with that. The thing is that the mindset Unity uses is very much game dev specific. And if you are interested in breaking into game development, like your job as a hobbyist of making games is to get into game development, Unity is absolutely the way to go. It's very approachable. It's using the same type of tools most big studios are using, where you're using an engine and you're placing things into it and that type of real-time framework. It's the same setup things like Unreal Engine and CryEngine are doing, just on that smaller scale. It is 100% where you need to be to get started. But if you're just a hobbyist hackist and it's just your side project or your passion project or whatever, something like Monogame, which is just a framework of, just like if I were to go into Visual Studio for my line of business apps and say, I want to make a, let's just say web API. And so it throws up some of the basic networking code and skeleton for you, and then you can just start working on stuff. XNA did that, where it gave you your game loop for free. It gave you your main functions. You could very quickly get game components thrown in there. And it was very much a code first, handle everything attitude, which a lot of business developers are used to dealing with. So it became a very natural transition from that way. So I think it's a wonderful framework for anyone who is a professional developer and wants to get into game development, because it works closer to the way they think. Whereas every time I've tried to attack Unity, it's like, okay, and now it does this. And no, it's like, no, I want to get in there and I want to actually play around with that game loop. And I actually want to move things. And they're like, nope, you just drop the object in and put its properties on. It's like, that's not how I think.
Yeah, the mindset for me is a big... I've used Unity a long time. I was doing .NET programming and business applications and stuff many years before Unity was in my office. But it was the mindset, for one thing, changes a lot, in my opinion. And even though I've done some professional contracts through like Upwork or like freelance on this or that VR project or whatever, I really have a hard time hanging with that state of mind, because the same things I would try to do pretty simply in code. Like if you're a coder first, you got a lot to keep up with. But in terms of compatibility with everything and, how easily it's going to get onto PlayStation, like you said, and it's worth keeping up with, I guess. So that's been a thing for me, I guess.
Again, I couldn't agree more. And I've seen similar monogame-ish type frameworks pop up in other languages, some of them to almost laughable effects. I try not to make fun of any language, because anything that gets somebody interested and thinking in that mindset, I think is a great thing. Yeah. That talk I gave in St. Louis way back many years ago has evolved in many ways. Believe it or not, that talk is still active. I am giving it in Pennsylvania near the end of the year. I mean, it's almost unrecognizable from the original one. And now it's almost pure design and theory and the way to think. I've gotten away from actually showing live code. Not because I'm afraid of it anymore, but because I've discovered it limits the audience. The reason I bring this up is because I tell people, when you get out there, find, here's some frameworks that do things, that lay things out for you. And I hit just about every language I can think of. And the only language I make fun of is Ruby. and I tell people, here's a toolkit for it. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I have to look at my cheat sheet. But here's a toolkit from it. Play around with it. Learn game design. But Ruby is so notoriously slow, you're never going to get good performance out of a Ruby thing. So learn it to learn the mindset. But then you may have to bite the bullet and move to some other language. But at that point in time, you're not learning two things at once. You're transitioning to a new language. You're not learning a new language and a new way of thinking at the same time.
Yeah. On top of all the presentations and stuff, it looks like you're organizing a conference also at this point. Is that right?
I've been doing it for years. We have dates for this year. We're a little behind schedule and looking at other things. Whether or not it actually succeeds this year, we'll see. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely in the plans. Normally by now I would like to have had my speakers selected, and we're just not there yet. So now it's like, how long do I have to promote and sell tickets? And can I even break even at this point? Is some of the things we're looking at. Just because besides pandemic issues and job issues amongst the various other people that helped me run it, like I just switched jobs not too long ago, and other things, it's like we all got so far behind schedule. We're like, are we even going to do another physical event this year? Do we want to just do virtual, which we can spin through in like 2 months, even though we're really not going to make any money off of it? At least then we break even because we're not paying $5,000 for the venue and $10,000 for food and things like that. So yeah, that is definitely a thing that's being looked at right now. And that is definitely a whole different, you think keeping track of a game world is difficult? You're dealing with one, maybe 4 players at that point. Juggle things with contractors and getting speakers and getting attendance and all the people at the venue. And yeah, that's a whole nother nightmare.
It's funny, like that would surprise me, except that I got a little bit involved with our local developer co-op here in St. Louis and just linked up enough to keep up with the events and things that were happening. They've got one like indie festival every year that they like to do. And I think last year was the first time that they just couldn't get it in time. It became another one of those things like, can we make this work in time? And ultimately they decided like, no, we can't, and we're not sure people would come back out yet. And it's a huge risk right now. And I've got a lot of sympathy. I would hate to be on the business end of that, literally, you know?
Right. And do I think we could feasibly pull off the conference in time? Yes, me being a speaker, I think I could get enough speakers in that we could actually have content. We already have the venue reserved. We haven't paid our deposit yet, but our dates are pinned in because we've dealt with them for so long. Could the event physically happen at this point? Yes. It's completely the business decision of, do I think I can sell 200 to 300 tickets minimum to even pretend to break even, or even sell, 4 or 5 sponsorships to break even, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the types of things we really should have been seriously doing in March. And just between everything going on with all the people involved, those all slipped. So now we're in mid-June and it's like, do we have time for this stuff? Can we get it run in 3 months? Because we're supposed to be basically the Thursday and Friday after Labor Day. Can we pull it off in 3 months? Yes. Will it be an event we're proud of? As in, we're getting enough attendees to business-wise make sense. We're getting enough attendees to make it fair to the speakers we're trying to bring out, et cetera, et cetera. That's where we're really having to have the conversation right now.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping, because again, tons of sympathy here, because just the little glimpse into that world I've taken, it seems to be a nightmare, worse than I would have guessed. So best of luck with that. You're in the Huntsville area, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How hot is it there right now?
So I just did a tweet earlier today saying about how wonderful it was. Ignore the fact I'm wearing a hoodie right now. This ties into this. At 2:00 today, it was about 95 degrees with a heat index of about 105.
Ugh.
We had a little random thunderstorm come through. It lasted 30 minutes most. It just kind of popped up, dumped a bunch of rain, went away. The temperature dropped. I think the official numbers are on my Twitter, and it's not worth looking up, but it's like the temperature dropped 12 degrees. The heat index dropped 15 degrees. So we're only talking, it went from 95 and 105 to 82 and 90.
Yeah.
But that was the greatest thing in the world because that 15-degree drop happened in like 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
See, if we
like,
got down to 82
still 90
here.
degrees, I'm like, yes, but it's the most awesome 90 degrees ever, you know?
Right. Yeah. If we got between 85 and 90 right now, it would be everybody outside. Let's go while we can. Because, yeah. We're up in the upper 90s, close to 100 right now, too, in St. Louis. And it's just, yeah, the lawn is starting to die. And it's like, there's nothing to do. I'm not going to do anything for that. What can we,
Yeah.
Oh,
and we're forecasting for that for the next 10 days. Yeah, so these little pop-ups are the only thing that's saving us. Geographically speaking, Huntsville's weird, and not besides all the other weird stuff. But on our east side, that way, we've got the very edge of the Appalachian Mountains. It pretty much ends at the Tennessee River and doesn't really cross over. Hills and stuff do, but that's pretty much the very end of the Appalachian. And we're in no ways hilly. It's only like elevation 800 to 1,000, it's not that high, but it's the very end of where it hits. And then it's the Tennessee River Valley, which cuts off the bottom side of Huntsville and then wraps around the bottom of that to go up into Chattanooga and back into Tennessee and all that. So we're in like the literally riverbed of the river valley of the Tennessee River. So not only do we get all this heat, but from being in the valley, it soaks up everything from the Tennessee River, which is somewhere between 1 mile and 2 miles that way, and just sucks up all this humidity and just sits there and doesn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gets incredibly brutal here in the summers. And we're all like, why do we do this? And then it's nothing in the winter. We'll get like one iced over day, and it's like, ooh, that was pretty bad. And, the spring and the summer or the spring and the fall for what we have of it, more so fall than spring, is just absolutely gorgeous, and it kind of makes up for it. But yeah, you get that sitting in this river valley 2-3 months of just crushing humidity and heat indexes and whatnot. So yeah, it's very interesting this time of year.
Yeah. Are you graced with any of the remote work opportunity with the new job? Anything like that?
Yes. Apparently my office is in Atlanta. I've never seen it.
Nice.
There's no real expectation for me to ever go there. It's there if I want it. And what with my previous job, the one I just left, it was in Knoxville. So similar 4-hour drive if I actually needed to. And I think the entire 4.5 years I was at that job, I think I went to the office maybe a dozen times. Mm-hmm. So, I've been working remote for a long time, which gives me a lot of clout to be able to work remote at other positions and whatnot. So it kind of works out nicely that way. Yeah.
See, and that crossed my mind because I have in the past done defense-ish work, which I seem to recall you're sort of in that world a little bit as well, or you were at one time.
So when I was at St. Louis Days of .net, yes, I was very much working for a defense contractor. I was actually the CTO of that company at the time, multi-million-dollar company, et cetera, living, breathing that world. And no, I did not work remote, but that was the last in-office job I ever had. When I left that job, I was like, I'm tired of the commute. I'm tired of having to dress up to sit in an office and have nobody see me, et cetera, et cetera. So I was fortunate enough that I left that job, but they still then hired me on contract for 6 months. And I kind of got my feet wet working remote from then and saying, I was able to specify the terms of the contract. And that led me to an opportunity to then work for other people and other places. I haven't worked for a company in Huntsville, 8-ish years, something like that.
Wow.
So, that's worked out very well for me. And it's not that a couple of them haven't talked to me, but then they're all like, yeah, we're defense contractors. You have to come into the office. And I'm like, no, You won't.
No.
You don't pay me enough to do that. They're like, we want to offer you this much salary. I'm saying, yeah, you don't pay me enough to do that. Because when you're early in your career, defense contracting pays more than normal commercial business. Just because of the way those contracts work and whatnot, you can get started at a salary higher than the other ones. The thing is that as you go up in experience, they don't scale well.
Yeah.
Whereas you'll hit a point where, I mean, I've gotten some offers where they wanted to give me some ridiculous amounts of money, but the baggage that comes on top of it almost isn't worth it. Whereas now I'm making, now I don't want to go into the exact numbers I'm making and whatnot, but I'm doing very well right now.
Yeah.
Whereas, I might be able to get 50 grand more out of the government, but that's showing up to an office every day in a suit, in meetings 24/7. You're never getting anything done, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas now I'm working with just as big type of companies, but I have greater control over what I'm doing and things like that. So, I mean, I think it's great that there's all this DoD stuff here, and it's dogpiling on the city and the economy now. Huntsville as a whole is doing great. I've got the whole Space Force headquarters coming in, which is about to be an influx of more DoD money. We recently got named one of the best cities in the country from one of those people who do things like that. We're making all these top 10 lists. We're getting all these diversified different companies coming in and doing stuff. We have a huge Meta data center in town that they're about to expand. We've got a Google data center not too far away. We've actually got Google Fiber. We pulled that off. That Google Fiber router is right there, and let me tell you, it is everything they say it is. So we've got all these great quality of life stuff that's been happening, but it is very much at the source of the federal government. The federal government decided to shut this place down and move a few key things out. This place would almost be a ghost town.
Yeah. See, I came up in a similar situation. My parents came up. They met at Scott Air Force Base in O'Fallon, Illinois, and so when I grew up, like, it was very much that same kind of thing. Like, that area kind of thrived. It's close to St. Louis, sure, so it's going to do okay. But there's so much, like, defense contracting, so many companies like that, airplanes being made, and the airport being expanded and all that stuff. Like, almost everybody worked in or around that space. And sure enough, when I got out of college, I only did one or two jobs before somebody who I had actually met at Toys R Us when I worked there as a teenager. I saw him and he goes, "Dude, I work for the government now. I do a contracting job. I got to get you in on this." I'm like, "Yes, let's go." So my buddy from Toys R Us got me in the door doing defense contracting, and it's so much what you described. It's like, it starts well, and it's good experience with, I mean, you'll never learn as much about supporting older technology and older software systems, which is a very real thing in development and tech in general. But you'll never learn as much of it as you will doing that kind of work. And at the same time, you usually get to work with some cool newer stuff. It scales up, and yes, I found that eventually, to stay in the game and to stay developing my career, it would be go ahead and put on a tie, get involved in the requirements gathering side, and you'll be helping make the decisions and interfacing with our partners on the federal side and everything, which is fine. It's good work. Somebody's got to do it. But to me, it appeared that would be so much less productive work, which I didn't think was going to be important to me. I thought, like, if something pays well and does well, I'm not going to care. Turned out I did. As a person who developed very technical skills and learned to, any coder at heart wants to get stuff done. And I found that after a certain point, I couldn't not get stuff done at work anymore. It drove me a little crazy. So I had to sort of move on to other things.
And I think you bring up a really good point there, because it is, again, there's a lot of nifty tech you get to play with. I'll date myself a little bit here. So the thing we all take for granted these days, prox cards and all that, from being here in town very early in my career, I worked with a company here in town that worked on the initial project called the RFID tag. Yeah, it was the RFID dog tag, which they were originally using for combat readiness because it was an unproven technology. And we were playing with all the scanners and all the RFID scanners, and the guys would run by getting on the plane when they're getting ready to deploy, and you would automatically check them in, and they could see as soon as the plane was filled and tell it to go, and all that stuff. And it was all this great new technology. But as you go on in the career, the people who stay in that environment and stay successful lose that hunger for that tech.
Yeah.
To them, it's a paycheck, and it's no one's going to fire you. It's very dependable. It's generally got very good benefits. It generally pays very well. 5 o'clock comes, you hit the door. You never think about it another time. And there's a whole group. Even when I was teaching college, you could tell the students where I was like, you go work for Raytheon because you're going to clock out at 5 o'clock and be completely done. And there's plenty of room for the people who do that. And you're going to go start your own company, because and I've seen these people who had that passion for tech, who then chased that paycheck and chased those benefits, and it was completely extinguished. And, how many good algorithms and good things and good technology did we lose because that paycheck completely destroyed the spirit of that coder?
Yeah.
Just to really date myself here, I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. My dad was in the Air Force. So Fort Bragg, Pope Air Force Base. You've heard of both of them because if you've ever seen a movie with Delta Force, they showed Fort Bragg. 82nd Airborne, they showed Fort Bragg. Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I was living there when Operation Desert Storm, the Iraqi War, started. We lost 80% of our population overnight. That city became a ghost town. You did not realize how much. Of course, me, I'm in high school at the time. So our school was the same, but everyone was like, yeah, half my family's gone now. Yeah. You go out to restaurants, there's nobody there because you forget how much of that economy was based on the 82nd Airborne people who have no family there. They're not, they might be dating, but they're not married. They don't have kids. They're just out blowing their money and being wild and reckless. And all of that's gone. Literally just the support system is left. And it's like, there's nobody here. It was eerie when that happened.
Yeah. If you ever want to see a Buffalo Wild Wings shut down overnight, yeah, for sure, close down our Air Force Base. Yeah. I mean, anything like that, all those places that everybody goes after work to hang out or whatever, it is that. The culture is the young people who are enlisted or getting started as contractors and stuff. It's a coincidence that, my parents met there and we all stayed around, which was cool. But yeah, it's kind of a fascinating dynamic for a region, major cities nearby or not, to see everything kind of that closely tied to the same couple of things. I guess before too much time runs out, we should kind of round you out as a gamer. Let's take a minute to hear kind of what you came up playing and what kind of stuff you're into now.
Oh, I mean, first game I played, I was like 8 years old in the 80s. And it was, my dad came home with the TR, it's not an old one, it was brand new at the time, with the TRS-80 Model 3 tape drive, little bitty small game, got started there. It's actually, I got started programming too, because it was hanging around. And back then you couldn't destroy a computer because the entire operating system was on a disk and you took it out before you did anything. So you couldn't really destroy it. So a lot of time to hack around, but I mean, shortly after there, we had an Atari 2600. I remember getting a Nintendo back when it was new. And the things that really get to me as a gamer are more action and adventure type things. So, I mean, I have a Zelda tattoo. I don't know how much you can see it. There's so much Zelda memorability back there. It's not funny.
Oh yeah.
It's probably, there's very much of that series. I'm very much a Nintendo boy. I have sometimes in those long meetings when you're on mute, you just have to catch Pokemon. And also just as with the type of adventure and that type of action game I grew up with, which a lot of now is turned into first-person shooters, which I find boring as a genre for the most part these days. Yeah, I'll play some of the better ones, but it's like, how many times are you going to rehash the same thing that really doesn't change? As I've matured more, I got more into survival horror. So I actually do have a Twitch stream. My Twitch stream is still active for my gaming streams right now, which is I do one on Saturday nights, where I do survival horror type stuff. Last week, we just got done beating the Resident Evil remake. And even though this is everything I just complained about, we're going to do a second attempt at Doom Eternal starting this week. We tried it last week because every now and then you just need some stupid fun.
Yeah.
It gives me an excuse to play this M-rated game. It's all just run and gun and visceral guts and whatnot. So it's not really scary per se, classically. But we tried it once, and I very much got turned off by the fact that I bought the game. I actually bought it. I didn't get it off Game Pass, even though you can for the Xbox. I bought it, went to play it, and the first thing it does is it says, log into /create your Bethesda.net account. And I'm like, no, I'm playing single player, and I paid for this game. Go away.
Yeah.
So we immediately turned it off. And the reason we started playing the Resident Evil remake was because it was the only other survival horror thing I had installed on my Xbox Series X. So it was like, literally, we're just going to go into this. And, we had fun with it and everything was good. I did some searching online later that said if you disconnect your Xbox from the internet, like physically unplug the wire, when it cannot connect the internet, it won't ask you to log in. So we're going to play it single player, just offline.
Yeah.
But I think on cue after that, assuming nothing new comes out to preempt this, is I never got around to playing Dead Space 3. I played the other two, and I would like to play 3 before the hype train for the new remake comes out, because I'm really interested in the remake. Dead Space was such a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
So that's where that one is. And then I do a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon stream, which is generally something family friendly. My kids will sometimes show up and sit around in the background. Speaking of Pokemon, the last 2 we did was Brilliant Diamond, or technically Shining Pearl. We did Shining Pearl when it first came out. We just got done with Legends Arceus. And then now I'm playing Kingdom Hearts, which I had never played before. Spoiler alert, I'm really not enjoying it, but I didn't enjoy it when I played it back in the day because I hate the DualShock controller.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I hate it because it's a dated, old, bad game design. But at least now it's tolerable, so I'm actually able to get through it and see what people are talking about, and I'm starting to get a little more familiar with it. But it's not playing like this anymore. It's the more comfortable controller that I'm able to use an Xbox controller and whatnot. But yeah, if you want to hear me complain about game design, come watch that Sunday afternoon stream, because all I do is rag on the game the entire time.
It's an interesting series because I love the idea of it. I think the idea is brilliant.
I love the idea.
Yeah. And I think I would love to like it more. It's about the best I can say. I tried one of the earlier ones a long time ago. It's hard to even sort out the names as somebody who's not a big fan of the series, but like I'll try one every so many years and go like, I've either missed too much or something. Like this isn't clicking for me, but maybe one day. I don't know.
And the strange thing about it is, another one of the reasons I stopped with it back in the day was the DualShock controller was part of it. Because one, I had borrowed a PlayStation from a friend of mine who I let borrow my Xbox because I don't remember but they wanted to play something. And so not only was the controller not comfortable for me with that DualShock controller, and there are people who love the DualShock controller and hate the Xbox controller. We're not going to go into that argument at all. Comfort factor, that's neither here nor there. But there's also the fact that X, square, triangle, circle has no meaning to me.
Yeah.
Whereas ABXY does. So there was that factor too. But I was fighting the controller as it was. I played for a good 5-6 hours. And the way the original Kingdom Hearts on disc for the PlayStation 2 was set up, in those 6 hours, I never saw a single Disney character. And just gave up completely. I'm like, I cannot do this. Now play one with the Final Mix remix that I have on the Xbox. So you buy it as, and I don't remember if it's still on Game Pass. It was at one time, but you buy it as Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 Final Remix. So they actually have gone through and done a HD remake of it. You actually see some Disney characters earlier, and they kind of get you in that story and show how the Disney's tying in during that intro part. You still don't play with them for a very long time, but you see them earlier. And then when I was more comfortable with the controller, I was able to get to, within 4 hours, I got to my first Disney World. And within 3 hours, I actually was playing with Donald and Goofy. So at least it got to that point quicker. But yeah, and I am generally not a big fan of pure HD remakes.
Yeah.
The reason being is because I don't care about the updated graphics. I play enough indie games and do enough in the indie space and whatever. Graphics don't bother me if you have a nice, compelling story. Mm-hmm. But none of these games update the game loop, that none of them update the feeling of the controller, make it more so they still very much have those floaty anachronisms of the PlayStation 2 era, where of course things were a little floaty and were a little off time just because the power of the system and the amount of stuff you're trying to push through it. We don't have those problems anymore. So now it just feels like old dated design.
I agree with that. And that's something that has me really interested in the upcoming Turtles games re-release, because the first footage of that I saw, it looks like just a deep, deep reworking of like everything. And they have some interviews out where they're talking about like, we had to make this feel right and everything. And I'm like, oh, you have my attention, because I think you can still play the first arcade game on like Xbox Live somewhere. It wouldn't have been that big a deal. But if they're trying to modernize it a little bit, now I'm interested,
Right. And funny you should mention that, because right beforehand, like between work and eating dinner and getting ready to come talk to you, spoiler alert for the people who are listening after the fact, we're doing this in the evening. But I was actually watching the Escapist review of that game. Mm-hmm. And they explicitly mentioned the controls feel great.
Oh. That's
and
good
that
news.
as the game it is, it is very satisfying for that nostalgia. But then they're like, now give me a reason to play it. And they're like, they have these weird upgrading mechanics, and all the players play exactly the same because they're trying to, when you walked up to the arcade, you just got whichever one was there. So they all had to basically play identical. All the characters play identical. There is some branching paths and some leveling up, but the reviewer it was NC Wushu on The Escapist, or Casey Wushu. And he was like, literally, I mean, the 4 hours of the initial playthrough was a blast, but they tried to add all these references that they don't explain, and they give you this progression, but then you're playing the same characters who all play the same way, so it doesn't feel the same way to go through. They're like, as a couch co-op, great. It's on Game Pass. Maybe I'll get a few people who have the nostalgia factor and we'll blow through it sometime. But I mean, it sounds like they fixed the control problem, but they didn't fix the problem of why it should be a compelling experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Because it seems right, because it's the same style. If you have not played when Rare redid Battletoads.
Yes, I did.
That is worth everything. Yes. They fixed everything about the controls. It felt good and tight when you're doing these weird combos that you almost have no control over. You felt like you have control over them. They added the humor. They added the cutscenes. They added everything to make it feels great. It plays great. It's still extremely difficult for those who like the challenge, and they give you just enough of a, bone to go on. I think that is taking that old school style and remaking it correctly. Yeah. And I think we need to be paying more attention to people doing stuff like that, because that's how you do it right. The only reason I'm really excited about this Dead Space remake, especially because Visceral Games doesn't even exist anymore, is they said, we wanted to stay true to the feel of the original, but we went and talked to all the old fans and said, what do we need to fix? So they're coming at it with, we don't want to change the game and the tone and the atmosphere of the original, but we want to make it modern. And that's like, yes, that's how you do a remake.
I could definitely see checking that out. And that's not really my usual thing, but I did play it back then and I would absolutely try it again. So I'm also curious. So you're a established streamer at this point. You've been doing it for a while and you've hit affiliate. So you're checking all the boxes. Are you finding an audience for like the family stuff? Because that's something I've been dabbling in for the first time, and it's been very interesting. Like, how's it going for you?
I have discovered, because of the way I do it, it's very hit or miss based on the game. And that goes for both streams. yes, I have people who will show up to both and keep me company. I have people who will show up for the mature game stream on Saturday night. I have people who will show up. I have people who show up for the coding streams, but not the other. So we're going to ignore all that. But as far as looking at the numbers consistently, it's so game dependent. And it's also game dependent and time dependent. And what I mean by that is if I'm doing a game that has a big community behind it, yes, I'll get random people who show up. I've gotten 2 or 3 random people for the Resident Evil when I was doing the Resident Evil stream, just because I was playing the Resident Evil remake and they're fans of that game. Mm-hmm. When we started Pokemon Brilliant Diamond or Pokemon Shining Pearl, right when it came out, a lot of people showed up just because that was the new Pokemon game. Mm-hmm. But as I was trying to play it on stream, and I only do that, 4 hours on a Sunday, yes, I'll go through and I'll pick up extra, catch extra Pokemon or do some leveling up so that we can be more compelling during the streams. But, as the community was done with the game for that one, like 3 weeks afterwards, nobody cared about that one after a while.
Yeah.
And I'm still going, it took me 2 months to beat it because of the amount we were doing it on stream and whatnot. You could see the numbers dwindling just because it was no longer the hot game. Same thing with Legends Arceus. Legends Arceus, I would get more random people further in from it because it had a lot more staying power. And if you haven't played Legends Arceus, go play it. That was a phenomenal game. Mm-hmm. You can really tell where Legends Arceus was the natural progression of what they learned from Sword and Shield. And you can tell from all the trailers we're seeing for Scarlet and Violet that they're learning from both those put together to a mainline game. Mm-hmm. But Legends Arceus was a phenomenal game. It had a lot more staying power. But when we're getting at the end game of that one 2 months out, you could see those numbers because people had moved on to the next thing. So there's very much, can I play something right when it's hot? And then to gain extra people who then stick around for the community. And we'll pick up 1 or 2 people every time for that, or am I just going to my normal round? So, and Sunday afternoon is just a weird time.
Yeah.
Who's watching on a Sunday afternoon? Especially now that we're getting into summer, so people are going to be out and doing stuff. Sunday afternoon in the middle of winter is not quite as weird. Sunday afternoon in the middle of summer, people show up maybe if it's raining where they are, or, there's a lot of things that go into that. So, but yeah, it's a very fickle beast.
It's streaming is fun if you're not super discouraged easily. And like you said, a lot of people try to do the variety streaming thing, and I think that's worth doing, even though it's going to be very inconsistent between games, between nights, times of day you try to do it. And, I tried unusual stuff. You followed the tweets as I was trying to learn to cook, which I had a blast with. My family really appreciated it.
Right.
But we were ordering meals through one of the food services, and I would just every night try to cook something different. I found people wouldn't stay for certain types of foods, and they would admit it. They're like, I'm not into it. You're making spaghetti again. I'm out. It's like, right. Okay, bye. But it's fun experimenting with it. It's just hard to track in your mind, like, this may be because of the topic tonight. It may be because of the time. There's a lot of things to think about to try to capitalize on. So if you can sort of keep yourself motivated through, a couple of nights slump here and there, you can do it,
Right. And I've openly said, which seems weird right now, because as I mentioned earlier, my coding streams are kind of on hiatus from some stuff I was doing in the spring. They're coming back soon. Everybody keep checking out. They're coming back soon. I promise. They may change when they were, because I'm trying to find when I can find a consistent time to do it with the new work schedule, which is the main holdup right now. But it's no longer the fact that I was teaching a college class in the spring and I just did not have time.
Yeah.
So those are coming back, and I consider those my bread and butter, and that's where I'm really trying to develop my audience. Part of it was I needed to keep my hours up to maintain my affiliate status during that break, but I had already been doing the game stuff beforehand. I've openly admitted to my wife, not just my audience, to my wife, I almost don't care if you don't show up or not. This is my excuse to go through my games backlog.
Yeah.
I'm a busy guy. I got 2 kids. I got a wife. I'm doing the conference stuff. I've got the day job, et cetera, et cetera. I literally just scheduled a time for me to play games. And people can come join me if they want, and we will have a good time talking, and I'll talk to the chat, and we'll do all that stuff. Or if I'm having one of those slow nights because I'm playing a weird game and it's at a weird time, I'll just sit on stream and kind of make fun of the game and play it to have fun. And if everybody's quiet, there you go. I'm still getting my chance to keep up with my games.
I think you hit on something that makes sort of a great takeaway for tonight. Like we do so many things that are difficult to gauge, build on, get momentum with. And if you're giving yourself a reason to do it, like this is my time to go through the backlog, like you said, this is my time to put an hour toward a project that it may take me 3 years to get this done, or whatever it is. But if you've got that thing that makes you feel good, like this is my time to sit at my desk, very late at night after everybody goes to bed, or however it works, I think that's what you hang on to. You don't hang on to the 200 subscribers or 300 streams yesterday. It's got to be that thing like win or lose, rain or shine. This is my time,
Right. And there are, I would like to get into more content creation. I would love to get some educational YouTube videos out or get some stream stuff and say, hey, people really like this, so let's consolidate it down and stuff like that, and kind of get into that stuff. But again, that's time, and that's, this is my time where I can say, I'm going to sit down and have fun and do this, and we're just going to let the world join.
Yeah, very cool. As we sort of wrap things up, let's take a minute to make sure we sort of point people in the right direction for your various things. So you take the lead on that.
All right. Easiest way to find me is on Twitter, Freestyle Coder, all one word crammed together. I have friends that will send me a tweet faster than they can text me because the way that stuff happens. Almost all the rest of the stuff is through that. I don't have enough followers on YouTube, and this is not saying follow me on YouTube because I don't have the content to have that number of followers. If you look up Freestyle Coder, you'll find the few things I have posted. You won't say youtube.com/freestyle coder. That won't work. But Twitch, Freestyle Coder, YouTube. The only one that's weird is my email address is Gardner. You can email me too. I don't care. I'll generally try to respond to anybody. So, but yeah, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I love talking about this. I've got conferences coming up. I will be in Wisconsin at that conference in end of July. KCDC, so relatively close to you. Relatively, yes, I know that's like a 6-hour drive across the strait. But yeah, KCDC beginning of August. Codepalooza in Louisville, middle of August. I should be at Tech Bash, which is where I'm also giving the game dev talk in November. So I'm also out and around. Again, if you follow me on Twitter, you can find out all that stuff. Love talking to people if I'm in your area anytime. Stop by the stream, ask questions. Got no problem with any of it.
Cool. Well, yeah, for sure. Get that content creation going, and we'll have you back and check in on that.
Sounds like a plan.
That's right, friends. GameDev Breakdown is back. If you enjoyed the show, please think about hitting follow or subscribe. Won't cost you a thing, and it's a big deal on this end. We have show notes at CodeWritePlay.com along with articles, news, and other stuff. You can follow us on social. The show is at GameDevPod. The website is at CodeWritePlay, and me, Todd Mitchell, at MechaTodzilla with 1 D and 2 L's. Don't hesitate to reach out to help us make this the show you want to hear, and we will catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.